So I avoided ink sketching, which is to say, doing drawings with ink without doing a pencil sketch first. I avoided that for ages because basically I'm uptight and I was always frightened of making mistakes. But I started doing it quite recently and I found it's been probably the most helpful thing that I've done to develop my skills or to get better, basically. And that's for two reasons, really. Drawing straight with ink without doing a pencil sketch helps you kind of grasp two really important, kind of fundamental principles or beliefs, I think, about art or drawing or whatever you want to call it. And the first is that this is just a piece of paper. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake and if your drawing goes wrong, because this bit of paper probably cost a penny or less than that. You can just chuck it away, put it in the recycling, and you've lost absolutely nothing. So it helps you embrace the idea that making mistakes doesn't matter, which you can then kind of put into or believe about everything you make, which is really positive. The second thing is that especially with ink drawings or sketching, the little imperfections and mistakes and overshoots and wobbles in your lines are actually the things that make a sketch look really nice and really human and really alive. And you actually want those in there. You don't necessarily want to eradicate them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a little kind of sketch with ink of a retro TV, an old kind of 60s TV set, one of those big old wooden things. And as I'm doing that, I'm going to talk you through what I'm doing, and I'll show you a couple of little tips, things that I've picked up over the last couple of months or so that have helped me kind of do this with as little mistakes or as few mistakes as possible, but also in a way that's turning out drawings or sketches I'm really enjoying. So where are we? I'm going to start this with a zero point 0.1 fine liner, and we're going to draw this TV set. So the first thing we're going to draw, excuse me, is the top edge of the TV set. So the top edge of the cabinet. And this is probably the most important line we're going to draw, because however long it is, and whatever orientation it is, that sets everything for the rest of the drawing. So it sets the size, it sets our angles and all that kind of thing. So I'm going to draw the first line, that top edge first, in a really light line with very little pressure. So we get a very thin, very faint line. And we'll then start working from there. So I'm going to tilt the page a little bit because I find it easier to draw nice kind of straightish lines when I'm moving from left to right like this. So we're going to draw our first line like so. Doesn't matter if we get any little wobbles or anything like that, that's all perfectly fine, because we can fix these kind of things when we add some weight to the lines. So that's our top edge. That's going to be the top of our TV cabinet. So what I'm going to do now is just measure down a little bit to where I want the size of this TV to be. And I'm just going to put a little dot in the two corners, which I'm going to use to join these edges up. And when I look at these, I'm going to look to see if it looks like I've got straight lines. It looks to me that this one is a little bit too far in, which is absolutely fine. So I know that when I draw down here, I want to hit the outer edge of that dot, because otherwise the line will be wonky. And that's why we do that, because it makes it easier if you can sit back and look at what you've done and see if you need to make any corrections. So I'm just going to do that now. So I'm going to draw a line and I'm going to hit the outside of this dot like so. Join this one up with this one, and I'm looking at this, I can see I need to go from the bottom of this dot like so, and then we can join these two up. So now we've got a relatively kind of straight, boxy looking cabinet frame. So now we've done that, we've got our sort of first lines. We can actually thicken these up a little bit in order to kind of define the lines a little bit. And also, because this is the outside, this is the main kind of shape, we want the line weight to be heaviest here, or heavier here than it will be anywhere else. So I'm just going to put another pass down. It doesn't matter if we get some little wobbles and some little kind of overshoots, because this is all adding to the sketchy nature of our drawing. And what we want to do here is get rid of a bit of this lump. So I'm going to go to the top edge of this. Not going to draw on the line, I'm going to kind of draw over the top of it and do that again. And basically we've minimized that little wobble now. I'm not too worried about that. And then we're going to do the same at the bottom. Okay, so we've now got our outer frame. So these old TV sets, they came in quite a thick cabinet. So the outer shell of the cabinet is, is about an inch thick or so. So I'm going to put 4 dots to kind of guide me. And these are setting the width of this kind of wooden cabinet. And we can see that we've got one in each corner now. We're just going to join these up again with very light lines. Doesn't matter if we get some wobbles. Like so. So we've now got our inner edge. We're not going to do anything to that line at the moment. We're going to leave it as is, because when we shade this or render it, that's when we'll decide our kind of final line weights. So these TV sets, basically, they were split into 2. On the left-hand side, you would have the actual screen, and on the right-hand side, you have the channel selector and the speaker and all that kind of thing. So we're going to put a dividing kind of bit of wood or bit of panel that comes down here. And I'm just going to measure in, and I'm going to say it's going to be that width there. So we're going to come down, make a mark, similar sort of width, and just drop down here. Now this bit of wood would be not quite as thick as the outer kind of case or cabinet, but it would still be quite thick. So we're just going to come in perhaps about 2/3 of the width of the cabinet. So now we've got our 2 sections of this TV. Our screen goes here and our controls go here. So again, I've looked at reference images. I'm not just conjuring this out of my brain. Basically, the screen's going to go here, but there are various bits of trim that kind of surround the TV screen. So the first one of those is very thin. It's just like a sort of a metal veneer that goes around. So we're going to do the same thing again with our dots to allow us to create this kind of veneer. I'm going to join these up. So it's nice and thin. Imagine like a metal kind of frame around the actual screen itself. And then inside this is where the screen goes. And the screen, if you think back to those old cathode ray tube TV sets, they have quite a thick bezel around them. And the screen itself is convex. It bulges out, like sort of like a fishbowl, basically, not quite that big. So what we're going to do now is create the outer edge of the bezel. So we're going to put the bezel is a lot thicker than this first frame we've just collected. So we're going to come in quite a bit more with our next 4 dots, like so, and join these up, obviously. Like so. And now we're going to draw the actual screen. So like I said, the screen bulges, or it's not perfectly square. So we're going to put the 4 dots which mark the corners of the screen, and we're going to then join them with arcs which will represent the bulgy kind of convex or concave, I can't remember which is which. Cave goes in, it must be convex. So we're just going to do an arc like this. Again, it doesn't matter if it's not perfect, because this is a sketch, it's not a engineering drawing. That's got a bit wonky, but we're going to colour this black or quite dark, so that will allow us the opportunity to kind of shade this out a little bit, so that is more the right sort of more similar to this one. But this is already starting to look like a TV now. We've got our bezel, and we've got a surround, a little metal frame, and we've got our bulgy kind of screen there. So what we're going to do on this side is going to put a box or a square, which is going to be our which would be our volume control. So this square goes here. Then we're going to do our speaker. So the speaker goes down like this, and it's about half the width of this panel. So we go down like that. We're going to turn that into a speaker in a moment. And then we've got our various knobs here. So we're just going to put our little knobs in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's the basic shape of our TV. Now we want to give it some legs. And we don't need to think about the sort of angles or anything too much for the first one, because what we'll do is make the first one and then make sure the second one we put on kind of matches it. So I'm just going to pick a point kind of in here. Let's make it level with the outer edge of the bezel. And we're just going to come out at a nice angle. We're going to draw the bottom of the leg and then come up like that. And so we're going to start at about the same kind of inner point here. And then if we measure down in a straight line from the edge of the TV and across, that gives us an idea of what of how far out the leg needs to be in order to have the same sort of angle. So we go down and we go in about 6 or 7 millimeters. So we're going to go down to about the same level, sorry, from here, from the outer edge to about the same level, and then out about there. That looks about right. Join this up. And we're going to put the bottom of the leg on and see that we've got about 6 or 7 millimeters here. So we're going to kind of mark a point there, come down and join the bottom of the leg up. That looks pretty kind of similar. And now we need to give it some back legs. And what we're going to do with the way we draw the back legs, we're going to simulate perspective. So if you could imagine looking at this from the side, the back legs would be pointing out towards the back of the room. So we're going to simulate that by drawing down here at a slightly different angle, the bottom of the leg, and then we're going to mirror this kind of thickening or widening of the leg by going up like that. And we're going to do the same thing here. We come in to about the same amount, and we sort of think about the angle so that this is sloping towards the to the ground. So we're going to come down in the same sort of way, bottom of the leg. There we go. So we've now got our back legs and our front legs, and we are going to put a little aerial, I think, on this. So I'm just going to have a quick look at this and mark out what is roughly the middle of the TV, and I'm going to put a little dot or a little mark on either side, and we're going to draw an arc like this to represent the base of the aerial. And what I'm going to do, just for a nice bit of symmetry or for a bit of kind of consistency, I'm going to draw the antenna kind of metal bits in a way that mirrors the angle of the legs. So this one is going to go up like this. We'll put a little nubbin on the end, and we're going to do the same here. We're going to mirror the angle of the legs. We've got our little nubbins. So now we've got a TV basically. I can see I've made a little mistake here. I should have put this edge of the leg behind that, but like most mistakes we make on ink drawings, we were actually able to fix that. So I'm just going to put that there so it's the same as this, and then we're going to shade that so you can't see that erroneous line. So we've got a TV set now. It looks like a TV, but it looks a bit flat and it looks a bit boring. And if you can imagine, if this was a real TV and you ran your hand across the front of it, all of these things, all of these elements and panels would stick out from the cabinet or be recessed into the cabinet by different amounts. So what we want to do is add some shading to this, or some rendering, which gives us the sense that all of these different elements are at different levels or different projection amounts, and they're all catching different amounts of light. So I'm going to switch to my smaller pen now, which is a 0.05, And we're going to start doing some work on line weights and also adding some shading or some cast shadows as well. So one of the things, if we think about this cabinet, this top edge, the outer part of the cabinet, is the furthest out. It will protrude further than any other bit of the TV, which means that all of these things inside it are recessed in slightly. So we need some shadow here. So what we're going to do is on this top edge, we're going to add some thickness to this edge, quite a bit of thickness or a heavier line, and we can already see that this starts to represent or show that compared to the other lines, this one is thicker, which represents cast shadow. So we can see that already that is starting to look different. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that line width down about halfway so that we get like a sort of the impression that this recessed part of the TV is casting shadow from a light that is coming up here somewhere. So what we now need to do, because we're working in black and white, we don't have any midtones, we don't have any greys. So what we want to do is do something which transitions between this area of absolute black, absolute shadow, into the white, which is our highlight color. So we're just going to add some little hatch lines, which represent the transition from shadow into light. It just breaks that line up a little bit. This doesn't look quite right yet. So what we're going to do is just bring our shadow, a deep shadow down a little bit. So it's a bit wider. And now we start to get the impression that this is a shadow. So we're going to do the same thing here. This bezel would be quite dark. It tended to be like a black plastic. So we're going to thicken this line up here. And if you can imagine, this would have been like a convex piece of plastic. So we want to represent that with some light and shade. So what I'm going to do is just bring some hatch lines down. This is going to look wonky until I finish it. We're going to gradually spread those out. Do the same thing on this side. Spread them out. So to represent less shadow being cast. And then we're going to put in fact, I might switch to my thicker pen for this. We're going to put a big black area here. To represent the black plastic surround. And then we're just going to work to get these hatch points, hatch lines, thin them out a little bit so we get a graduation. So this looks like a graduated shadow. To be honest with you, I think this is the hardest bit about drawing with ink, getting these transitions right. You can see now with the way that that shadow fades to light, it starts to look like this has got a convex shape. So we're going to do the same thing at the bottom. Again, remembering that it doesn't need to be perfect, although your blacks should be black. And we're just gonna, what we want is a little area here with nothing in it to represent this lighter area. So we graduate our hatch marks, go back to the skinny pen, and we're just gonna put some thinner lines in. And like I say, your blacks should really be black. What I mean by that is areas of dark shadow or you know, your darkest areas of shadow should be black. to give the kind of appearance of texture. But there we go. So now what we've got, what we can see that this looks like a convex piece of plastic, and this is bulging out into it. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn our speaker into an actual speaker. So all I'm going to do is put a thin kind of border around this to make it look like it's got a frame. And then speakers tend to be covered in some sort of mesh. So we're just going to add some hatches in this direction. And then some hatches in this direction to represent like a fabric mesh over the speaker. Again, doesn't need to be perfect. Now, if we think about the light is coming from above and sort of on the front of this, the mesh of this speaker would be set in. So again, we want to represent some shadow. So we're going to put some heavier lines on the inside of this where it would be casting shadow. So if the light was coming from here, it would cast a shadow inside the top and right edges of this grill. So by putting a heavier line there, we can see that this now starts to look as if it's casting a shadow. And we would probably do the same thing on the bottom of these knobs. I haven't got my glasses on, so I can't see what I'm doing properly. But we're just going to put a little bit of shading on the bottom of these knobs to make it look like they're circular and they've got a highlight on the top. The other thing we want to do is think about this piece of, so while this outer frame is quite thick and it's the furthest thing that's sticking out, this panel here, or this dividing line, wouldn't be all the way through, all the way out. It would be in slightly. So we need to represent that. So we need to have a little bit of cast shadow on it. So we're just going to put a little bit of shading on the top and the bottom, like so. And we're going to make that black, really black. And we're going to give this bottom inside edge of the cabinet a thicker line as well to represent some shadow. It looks like these need to be a bit more thicker as well. So it's starting to look like a physical object now. The legs are really important. So our legs at the back are underneath the TV, so they would be very much in shade. So we can give these quite aggressive or quite dark hatches. We don't really need to express any sort of shape on them. They just need to be dark because they're in shade. And this is where we can go some way to getting rid of that mistake. We want more shadow at the top. So I'm just going to thicken these lines up a little bit to represent the fact these are in deep shadow. Like so. And these legs here, the front legs, if you can imagine the top bit of these legs would be in deep shadow because they're set in slightly from the top, sorry, from the bottom of the TV cabinet. So we're going to give them a piece of deep shadow like this. And then we're going to again use some hatch lines just to represent the transition from deep shadow into highlight. Like that. So we've now got some shadow on the bottom, and I'm going to do the same on these antennas. So the light is coming from the top, so I'm just going to give the bottom edge of these antennas a little bit of shadow to represent light hitting the tops of them and having a reflection. And this edge, or this bit of this side of the base of the antenna, would be in shadow. So we're just going to put some hatch lines like that, and on the other side, just to show that this is a circular kind of base. So by having that area of highlight, we can see that it's a circular base. And then inside here, this is where our volume control is going to go. And in the same way as this has got a cast shadow on the inner edge and the top edge, we just want to make this line and this line a bit heavier to represent that shadow. Then we're just going to draw a little knob, volume knob. And again, to give this a bit of shape, we're just going to imagine light is coming from up here somewhere. So we're just going to add a little bit of shading at the bottom to give it some form and some shape. And we're going to put some hatching on here to represent the shadow that it's casting. So this is pretty much done now. So what I'm going to do is just look at this and see if there are any lines that I think need to be heavier. We haven't done anything to this frame here, so I'm just going to make that a bit heavier so that it actually kind of sticks out or pops a little bit more. That one there. That looks like a TV, pretty much. I think we could probably do with some more shadow down here. So I'm just going to add a little bit of hatching shading here and here as well. So what that's doing is representing shadow, but it's also making this kind of center panel where the screen is, and the screen is our main bit of focus. It's just making that pop a little bit more, but we're still representing areas of highlight and shadow. And the reason I say we want the screen to be the main focus, if I was turning this into a proper illustration, I would probably draw something in the screen, because the screen is going to be the message that we're telling with this illustration or this drawing. So you want this to be the part of it that really pops. Looking at this, our lines on our legs are a bit too thin. They don't really kind of mirror the thickness of the other bits. So we're going to give them some more line weight. And I might even, just to represent the shape of these things, just add a little bit of hatching to the inner edge to represent the fact that the light is coming from up here somewhere. It also kind of represents the wooden texture, because these legs would have been made of wood in the 60s. So there we go. That's it. No pencil lines, but and there are some little things, but so we've got a wobble here and a wobble here, and we made that mistake there, but it still looks to me like a reasonably kind of coherent drawing of a TV. I don't know why I picked these. I just like drawing these old TVs. All we did was draw one line, our first line, which kind of defined the size of the finished drawing. We made sure that was relatively straight, and then whenever we were going to draw an interconnecting line, we just marked it with a dot to make sure that, which gave us basically an opportunity to check our work to make sure that we weren't miles away on our angles, but it also gave us a target. When you're drawing kind of longish lines, it's much easier if your eye has got a target to aim to, as opposed to just drawing, hoping that you're staying straight. It's like having a sort of a course to sail as a boat. But that's basically it. The next stage of this would be figuring out what I wanted to do on the screen. But I hope that was useful. I hope you enjoyed watching that. It's quite a long video for quite a tiny drawing, but I hope it was useful. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, bye.